Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sam Jacobs from 6 Degrees Investor Relations. I'll be hosting today's presentation from EchoIQ Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Dustin Haynes. In today's presentation, Mr. Haynes will provide a detailed update on the US commercialization strategy for EchoSolv AS, which is EIQ's flagship AI-based decision support tool for improved detection rates for severe aortic stenosis, along with a summary of the company's broader clinical development pipeline and other opportunities. So after the presentation, we'll commence a Q&A, which is going to be moderated by EchoIQ's Chief Commercial Officer, Mr. Dion Stridham. That'll comprise both written submissions and a live question segment. A recording of the webinar will be available on EchoIQ's channels later today, and you can download a copy, obviously, of the company's latest announcements from the ASX platform. But for now, I'm happy to throw it over to Dustin to kick things off. Dustin, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. And for everybody, welcome to the call. And I want to first start off with a huge thank you to everybody who has joined the call. And for those who haven't joined the call but will watch this recorded, I also want to say a thank you, especially for all of you who have been supporting us throughout the years, and obviously throughout the phases post FDA, where you've either invested or been a strategic advisor to us, or simply just been watching from the sidelines and waiting for the right time to come in. And I want to thank all of you for being a supporter of the company. Look, we're going to spend about 35 minutes or so. You get me wound up, I might talk a little bit longer, and I apologize because I have so much to say and I'm so excited about what we're doing. But we'll try to finish with enough time that we can do questions at the end, and Dion will be collecting those. So with our modern day technology, we'll use the chat feature. So go ahead and send those questions into Dion, and he'll compile them up. Our commitment is to be as open and transparent as we can with any of the questions that come in. We'll commit to answering all the questions. If we can't get them on today's call, we'll make sure that we can circle back and answer the questions to our best of our ability. For those that we can reach back out to directly, we'll do so. If not, we'll try to set up some additional opportunities to answer questions. But we really are interested in not only questions, but feedback from each and every one of you, as you've been such a great supporter to us. So I want to start off the presentation really with just a recap. For those of you who haven't had a chance to get to know me or meet me yet, I'm looking forward to those opportunities. And anytime I can get a chance to jump on a Zoom call or a Teams call, or if I'm in Australia meeting everybody in person, I love the opportunity to talk with each and every one of you, because I think it's really important that not only do you feel comfortable at where we are as a company, but you feel really comfortable about where we are as a management team. And we'll speak a little bit about how we've been progressing over the time. But it seems hard to believe for me that it's been 60 days or a little bit over since I've started. I just started in January, and I'm really excited about what we're going to present to you guys today, because I think you're going to really see the momentum that we're starting to build. You're going to see the enthusiasm that we have with the business currently today and what we have for the future, as well as really the strategic focus that we have around trying to commercialize the product in the United States, and the uptake that you've started to see in just the early days of our first EchoSolv aortic stenosis product in the U.S. So I want to start simply with just an introduction for those that haven't gotten to meet me yet. I am relatively new, started in January. I know a few of you had a chance to meet me before I actually got a chance to start in January, just to get a feel for where the company was and start to lay some groundwork. But a little bit of who I am. I come with about 25 years of experience in the pharmaceuticals, biotech, medical device, and most importantly, I have a really good understanding of the commercialization of products in the United States. And we're going to get pretty deep into the discussion today about what that looks like in terms of integrations, reimbursement, and of course, what everybody's question, I know the question's coming, is when does revenue start to show up? And I think that's a fair question, and one that we'll address in the call today. But hopefully you're starting to see that as a management team between Andrew and myself. Andrew is the executive chairman. We're really focusing on being very, very strategic about the investments we make. We are very thoughtful about every single dollar we have. We know those dollars are not only possible because of each and every one of you, and we want to make sure that we're investing those in a way that's not only going to get us the greatest return, but also gives us the maximum amount of ability to drive the company forward. So you'll see that we have a very frugal approach about the way we invest, but we're very strategic and we're very agile and nimble about the opportunities that are in front of us. So between Andrew and I, we spend a lot of time making sure that we're doing the fiscal responsibilities of the company, but also making sure that we're investing for growth in the future, and that's our ultimate goal as we go forward. So a couple of things that I want to just touch on the people side, because you have heard from me about some of the things that we need to do to continue to make our company successful as we go forward. The first is having a good strategic partner sitting alongside myself, and so we've been able to upgrade one individual on the board from the U.S. Ken Nelson has joined, and that was an announcement we made right before the end of the year. And this is an opportunity to have somebody with vast cardiovascular and commercialization experience in the United States. So Ken has joined the board and actually been a great advisor for me. In fact, we had just our first board meeting, and Ken was invaluable in that board meeting to help give some strategic advice in terms of where we go and some of the folks that we want to talk to in terms of strategic partnerships. So Ken Nelson is a new board member, and he is placed in the United States to really effectively help us as we drive our commercialization. The second personnel change is with our Chief Technology Officer. You may have seen that in the business update. Sam Driven has started. He's 2 weeks in. This is really an opportunity for us to really solidify ourselves as a US-based company. Sam comes with a tremendous amount of experience in integrations. He was previously working in mammography and radiology, where he was working with a company that was doing exactly what we were doing, integrating software into the US hospitals. He understands the reimbursement landscape. He understands integration. And by the way, he also can do a bit of coding in the background and understands data science. So Sam is now our new technology officer, and I'm excited in the future for many of you to have a chance to meet Sam and hear Sam, kind of talk about his vision of what the technology can do. But it's been a great addition to the team, and Sam is based in San Diego. So you can start to see that we're rounding out the executive management team as well as the leadership team to ensure that we've got the right strategic focus and the right partners for us within the business to drive ourselves to be successful in the future. So I'm always going to start with this slide because I think this is the most important thing that I want to make sure that we're instilling is, well, we are a technology company and we are an incredibly innovative technology company. There's still a patient that sits at the end of every single one of our tests. And our goal is always to make sure that we are going to be a leader in the cardiovascular disease space, where it's still continuing to be the leading cause of death around the world. And well, it may seem like 2030 is a long ways away. It really isn't. And we've had a pretty ambitious goal that we want to be able to help over 2 million people get matched up to the right care. And this is unfortunate because we know as we start to go through some of the data that this disease, unfortunately, is very complex. Whether you're talking about aortic stenosis, you're talking about heart failure, or any other type of structural heart disease, many patients unfortunately go miss or underdiagnosed, and those consequences are quite dire. And so we believe that every single time our technology is utilized, it has an ability to affect not only the patient, but the patient's lives and their family members. And this is an important mission for us. And we'll continue to be a mission-driven and purpose-driven organization because, well, the technology is really, really exciting. The technology at the end is ultimately helping patients. And heaven forbid, if one of those patients happens to be your family member or mine, we want to make sure we have the best technology sitting at their fingertips to help them get the diagnosis and the treatment that they need. So I often get this question. I've had a number of you ask, say, well, when do we get to actually see the technology? And we're really happy to show the technology. Unfortunately, the technology is quite simple, and that's the beauty of the technology, is it's incredibly complex, but when on the surface, it's quite simple. And that's the design of really good artificial intelligence, is that it should be fairly simple to understand. And so I often get the questions, well, what do you really do? And I think this slide really helps to sum this up. We are an artificial intelligence company that has exclusive access to the largest data set in the world. And many of you guys have seen and understand that. But ultimately, what we do is we help healthcare professionals obtain earlier and more accurate diagnosis of structural heart disease. And so I want everybody to see that on this slide. And I'm hoping that as a champion of the company, and you're on this call for a reason, because you're taking time out of your day to learn about what we're doing. That means you're interested in what we're doing. And hopefully you're a supporter of what we do. And you may have friends, you may have family, you may have clients who say, well, what does EchoIQ do? And because we're quite complex in the way we talk about artificial intelligence, the simplest thing to explain to people is that EchoIQ helps healthcare professionals obtain earlier and more accurate diagnosis of structural heart disease. And this is how the technology works. We are definitely different than the competitors in the space. I often get this question, walk me through the competitive landscape and why you're different. Well, on this screen, we're going to be able to demonstrate how we're different in really one simple slide. So on the slide here, you're going to see images and pictures of an echocardiogram. These are ultrasound images of the heart, and you can see on each one of these images, there are pink dot or purple dots. What these purple dots represent from our side, what we actually see in the background of our technology, are measurements. So what other competitors do right now is they see the image, and they actually create artificial intelligence that becomes an image reader. Basically what a cardiologist does. A cardiologist looks at that image and they're trained to read that image. And from that image, they make a diagnosis. Well, that's great. But oftentimes, because of human error, because of technology, sometimes those images just aren't as clear as they would need to be. What makes us different and what sets us apart is we actually take that image, and within that image is a number of data points. And in those data points, what we actually can do is we can actually now extract those data points, those measurements, pull them into the cloud, and within our deep learning model, we actually create a 3D version of a heart. And from that 3D version of the heart, we can actually get a phenotypic picture of the heart and the changes that are happening of the total heart. And from there, we can make a diagnosis of what the specific disease is that we're looking for. And so what allows us to do is differentiate ourselves in two ways. We're different because now when we use we don't use the images and we only use the data. We can now start doing calculations in real time. And you'll hear me say this a few times, and you've probably seen it in our slides. When we talk about real time, what that means is within 3 seconds, the stenographer or the cardiologist can actually have the diagnosis sitting in front of them as an aided tool for them when they make the final diagnosis for the patient. Whereas many of the competitors, because they're using the images, these are large files, these are large data transfer files that have to be done. There's a large computation time, and oftentimes that can take several hours to maybe even the next day before they can get the report back to the cardiologist. So when you're talking real time and making a diagnosis for a patient, we can be there and assist that cardiologist in real time because we're using this unique method of the measurements from these echocardiograms. So when it comes down to what do we really do as a company, it's going to come down to what I continue to say over and over again. We help healthcare professionals obtain earlier and more accurate diagnosis of structural heart disease. So hopefully when you're explaining that to your clients, to your friends, to your family about what EchoIQ does, you can boil it down to a really simple sentence. But at the end of the day, it's incredibly complex, but it's incredibly unique in terms of what we do. But it is very simple when you say we take those images, we extract the measurements from those images, and we're able to, with aortic stenosis, 100% accuracy, being able to diagnose severe aortic stenosis, which is a really cool thing to do, but also more importantly, it helps patients. So why do we even talk about this? And I know many of you probably have seen this slide, but I think it's important to level set us in terms of what kind of a market we're moving into here. Right now, cardiovascular disease worldwide is a leading cause of death, but worldwide, it's also the leading cause of healthcare expenditure. And most of the governments around the world, in fact, all the governments around the world, including the United States and the healthcare system, are looking for ways that they can reduce the overall cost for cardiovascular disease, reduce the overall mortality, because of course, right now, unfortunately, if you look here, every 33 seconds in the US, somebody dies from cardiovascular disease. It is a devastating disease, and it costs the system money. It costs patients and families lives and impacts that they have across the entire ecosystem. And it is a very, very important disease state. Right now, it's about $250 billion of overall US healthcare expenditure right now for overall cardiovascular disease. And the most important thing that I continue to stress is that the vast majority of patients, nearly half, and I shouldn't say vast majority, but nearly half of the patients are heart failure go miss or underdiagnosed. And you can imagine if this is, this is somebody that you know, or a friend or a family member, and you've experienced, the frustrations of cardiovascular disease, you can understand that for many of these patients, they will bounce around the system for a couple of years because they're just really challenging to diagnose. And 50% of them who have heart failure go throughout the system, oftentimes costing the system incredible amount of money and impacting and disrupting their lives, and they're still not diagnosed accurately. And we'll get back to that 50% because it's a really important number when we start talking about the future products with heart failure. So what does our technology have demonstrated so far? Improved diagnostic accuracy. So we use this 98.6% because that's the average for us. If you look across our clinical evidence, and I'll show you that in a few minutes, we're at 100% accuracy when it comes to diagnosing severe aortic stenosis. And we are one of the only companies in this space that actually can diagnose mild to moderate aortic stenosis. So these are the patients that are really challenging for cardiologists because they're just not quite at that level of saying they're severe. The guidelines don't recommend doing some intervention, but yet they're asymptomatic, but they have some unique properties that show that they have some stenosis happening. And we are one of the few technologies that can diagnose those patients. And unfortunately, when a cardiologist is making the diagnosis, and we've looked this around the world, that can be as low as 50% and as high as maybe 83% where they can accurately diagnose. And we can help to close that gap for many of those patients. And something that's really interesting for us as we continue to move forward with our value proposition is that we're starting to see that not only do we have that improvement in efficacy, we're actually starting to create efficiency within practices. And out in the wild and real world setting, you're starting to see that 20% reduction in echo reading time, which basically means we're improving the efficiency with the cardiologist. They can now look at the echocardiogram, they can see our diagnosis right on the same structured report for them, and they can very quickly now analyze that patient and focus on those patients that need the most support and help. And that reduction in read time allows them to be much more efficient. And hopefully that means they can see more patients and they can treat more patients effectively. We are delivering this in real time. And one thing that I'm really passionate about, and one thing I think is really important for us as a AI technology, is that we actually now can start making some of those unconscious bias decisions that the cardiologist and the practice may have, and we can take those out of the equation because we don't look at age, sex, or race when we're looking at our diagnosis. We simply look at the structure of that individual's heart. There is an unconscious bias that happens currently today in diagnosis, and it's not through any fault of anybody's. I don't think anybody's purposely trying not to put a bias in, but what we see is that disproportionately women, and unfortunately African-American women, are oftentimes the highest rates of mis or underdiagnosis for heart failure and aortic stenosis. And through our technology, because we actually are agnostic to age, sex, or race, we're able to identify all patients regardless of those categories and those characteristics. So again, it helps to take some of the unconscious bias out of these technologies. And as we all know, and you have a mother, you have a grandmother, you have an aunt, you have a sister, we all know that oftentimes women in many diseases don't go to see the doctor as often as they should, or they go too late, and oftentimes because they're putting other people's health in front of their own. But this is a chance for us when we do get them into the room, we can make sure that they're getting the most accurate diagnosis as possible. And of course, that leads to earlier detection and hopefully referrals to get into medical intervention. So you're starting to see that our technology benefit expands beyond simply just finding and diagnosing a patient. It really is about impacting the overall workflow within the practice so that we can create efficiencies, we can save time, we can save money, and hopefully we can start having those patients get accurately diagnosed and into treatment and under care. So the big question you have is, why do we care? Why are we looking at this? What is the market, and why are we as a company believing that this is the way we should continue to go forward with our technology? Well, very clearly, the total addressable market in the United States is large. If you look at aortic stenosis right now as a healthcare expenditure, by itself as an aortic valve disease, costs the system about $10 billion in the United States. And that's growing on a rate of about 10% year over year and expected to continue to grow out to the outer years. There's about 6 million echocardiograms that are done every year. That's probably an understatement. It's hard to get the actual numbers of echocardiograms done, but that seems to be about accurate for the number of people getting an echocardiogram for aortic stenosis. And we also know that many of those patients go miss or underdiagnosed simply because they're mild to moderate stenosis, and oftentimes they are miss or under categorized. In this population here, we know that as we're working through the reimbursement, I'm going to talk to you guys about that in a few minutes. We know that there's a reimbursement opportunity for us there, somewhere between $100 to $150, per test, which obviously creates a really good business opportunity for us to not only have a large market, but a growing market and a reimbursable market for us. Now, on the heart failure side, as we start to talk about the future, you can see this market is a very large market. And while we always talk about aortic stenosis as solving a problem, heart failure is going to solve a big problem. This is about $70 billion of overall healthcare expenditure in the United States, and unfortunately growing at about 8% and to the outer years. There are a number more echocardiograms done, about 10 million every year. And this reimbursement now is already established, which is a really great thing. And we'll talk about the future and the opportunities for us in the coming months and years. But there's a reimbursement for that between $200 and $300. And unfortunately, as we said before, about 50% of these patients just go miss or underdiagnosed, and that is just a number I'm just not happy with, and I think the healthcare system in general is not happy, and we have an ability to close that gap for sure. But I think for many of us, it's not even just these numbers. I think for many of us, you can probably look around your family and look around your friends, and there's probably somebody in there as a family member or a friend or a close colleague that has cardiovascular disease, and we've all been impacted or affected by that. And the numbers that really strike me is what's happening in our children around the world. And the number we just recently saw in the United States is about 50% of our children are either overweight or obese. So when we start talking about this heart disease, we start talking about what's happening with our kids and how that's going to expand over the future. And it's just going to be a market where we're going to have to continue to find innovative technologies. And I think we're going to lead the way to ensure that, as heart disease continues to not only increase, but also probably start to show up in younger and younger patients, we're going to have a tool that helps them get diagnosed earlier and more accurately and onto care. So this is a very large addressable market, which gets us really excited about what the opportunities are for us, not only for the technology today, but for the future. And I want to go on this slide only for one reason, and everybody has seen this slide before, and I think it's important, but it's something that we don't often make sure that we have a ground truth, is why does our technology matter? One, it helps to diagnose patients, but it has to be rooted and grounded in truth. And here's our clinical evidence. And I think for many competitors out there, and I'll use the word competitor loosely to a small degree, I don't think they have the clinical evidence that we do to back up the technology. And so as we're starting to talk about what we do every day, it is rooted in clinical evidence. And this isn't just one study, this is multiple studies. And these are hundreds of thousands of echocardiograms that we've been able to test our model against and actually have either published or presented data in the public domain on the effectiveness of our product. And you can see there, these are a number of very prestigious institutions, whether you're talking Beth Israel and the Harvard team in Boston, St. Vincent's Health in Australia, and as many of you all know, as well as a large international cohort in Baylor Scott and White. And again, I think what you see across here is time and time again that our technology, regardless of the setting, regardless of the size of the study, continues to deliver on its promise of finding 100% of those patients, which is so important when we're talking about patients who get missed or underdiagnosed. So I think it's important for us to always ground truth in not only the fact that the technology is interesting and exciting, it is grounded in clinical evidence. So let's talk a little bit about not just the technology, but what we've done. I have to tell you, there is not a CEO in the world that is probably more proud of their team than I am. And there are many days where I try to figure out how I just keep up with the team. And so when we talk about the last 60 days, I don't take any individual credit for this at all. Our team is busting their butts out there every single day to be able to deliver the progress that we've had so far. And it feels way longer than 60 days, but I'm super excited to be able to share with you guys, either through the business update that you might have seen in our press release or in the slide deck that we've released out here or today, that we are continuing to build momentum every single day. And my goal is to not only deliver this type of results for you guys in the future, but to be as open and transparent about all of the small wins, the big wins, and even some of the setbacks we may have as we go forward. But since I started in January, it's always fun to sit back and take a look at what we've accomplished in a short period of time. And I don't have to look at every bullet point on here, but I think it is fun for us to go through where we've been able to really have some successful momentum in the business. Of course, the most important thing, and I've said this to all of you when you ask me the question, what is my most important deliverable in 2025? It's integrations. And you will hear me say it over and over again. I've got a big funnel. I have to fill that up as much as I can with integrations, and we're well on our way. So we've got Beth Israel now that is fully integrated. That took a little bit of time. Nothing bothers me more than slow process, but unfortunately, sometimes it takes time. Beth Israel is fully integrated. We've got actually five more hospitals now that are integrated, and that's a good mixture of institutions and small clinics that have integrated with our technology. And that's only the start. We've got another 60 or so hospitals and clinics that are in active discussions with us at the moment for integration. And I think that number is going to grow exponentially over the next several months. We've got a contract sales team. We've talked about this. I'm very strategic in the way we invest our money. I don't need to go out there and hire 100 sales reps. Would it feel great and be exciting to do? Sure, but it isn't the right way to invest our money. So we have a contract sales team. We've fully trained them in January, and they've been out there now in the field in February, bringing in new leads and starting to set up new business for us. And that is proving to be a very successful model for us, as they cover about 75% of the United States. So we are looking to plug the gaps with a few other sales reps. So we may add a few sales reps in the next several quarters as we start to expand across the United States. We've also had advanced discussions happening with many of our partners. And I think in my last call, I talked about how we were going to not only integrate with hospitals, but also be strategic about how we use partners to leverage our opportunity to integrate faster. And these could be through imaging companies. These could be through PACS providers. These could be through our reporting software systems. And so we're having really good discussions about opening up the highway for me to be able to plug directly into many of these systems. The beauty of our cloud-based system on a SaaS platform is I can connect really anywhere within the current hospital system to be able to provide my diagnostic tool. And so many of these companies are hopefully going to be a major partner for us in the future, and we'll be happy to share some of those progresses as we start to advance our conversations here. But this will be an opportunity for us to not only leverage the partners within the systems, but also to be able to bring a number of hospitals in for integration. And of course, most of you are going to have questions today, and we're going to have a good discussion about reimbursement. We've made some good progress here. Our miscellaneous code now 93766 is in play. That currently codes at about $148 for reimbursement. I've had my team already file in February for a Category 3 submission, so that is in. We've already started to receive questions back from CMS, that's the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And we've had a number of KOLs and societies such as the Echocardiogram Society in the US, and a number of KOLs who have lent their support into CMS for our approval of Category 3. We've received our meeting notice from CMS in May that we will be having a discussion there, and this is a negotiation, and we will be sitting with CMS to negotiate for a Category 3 code. Everything I've seen so far gives me nothing but confidence that we're going to be successful there, but it is a negotiation, and we will have to demonstrate our clinical evidence and our support in that meeting, which I think we've done very well in the last couple months. And we did a bit of housekeeping, and probably most of you probably don't even look into and think about the patents, but that was the first thing on my plate. I wanted to make sure that we had our intellectual property tied up nicely. So we've been able to finalize all of our international patent reviews. Those have been completed in the early part of this year, and now we have filed to all geographic specific patents around the world. So that's the US, Canada, European countries, Asian countries, and Middle East countries as well. So we are either now fully patent filed or patent pending in just about every geography that we anticipate having business in the future, which is a nice way to really protect our IP and make sure that as a technology company, we can continue to have protected business. And then finally, I told you this, I think we strengthened our team with a new CTO and a board member in place. And I've brought in a new consultant to help me with reimbursement to ensure that we get our Category 3 code done. And more importantly, I've got a new investor relations team in the United States who is helping us, because just like many of you who have shown a lot of interest in EchoIQ, you've seen the story, you've seen the data, you've seen how we've progressed. A number of US investors are now starting to take notice as well. So I'm having amazing conversations with them, just like I do with each and every one of you. And we're seeing some really good progress there, which has led me to look to an OTCQB process to get started, because many of the US investors do not have an access into the Australian market. So this is a way to open up opportunity for them to also be part of the company and be part of the progress as we go forward. We'll share more information about the OTCQB process as we get closer to our ticker and our date for going live, and that should happen hopefully in the next quarter or so. And of course, we've had a number of opportunities, as you guys have seen, and we've had conversations with you about where we're at and what we're doing. A number of large conferences have invited us either to come in attendance or to present. In fact, I'm on my way to New York tomorrow morning to present at a conference on the company's behalf, and then I'm off to California the next week to present at an investor conference as well on the company's behalf. Again, we're getting a lot of interest from the U.S. market. We're showing up in strength. We're showing up with our data, and we're showing up with our KOLs and our integrations, and we're getting a lot of attention, which is great. And that makes me really happy that for all of you that have seen the early works of EchoIQ, it's paying forward for us as we move into the US. And then the final piece I think is really important. We have a late breaking science. We're granted oral presentation at the American Cardiology Conference, which is in about 3 weeks in Chicago. Professor David Playford is going to present on our behalf for EchoIQ. And this is really going to be some really exciting science. And well, the science is embargoed at the moment today. Once we present that, we're going to be happy to share the findings for everybody on that. I think you guys will be really pleased about what the technology can demonstrate in terms of efficiency within a clinical setting. This is a really nice piece of data that continues to solidify why the technology is important in the practice. And I know I'm going to get a question because we put it in the business update, the pilot study that we have in Australia. So we've kicked off a pilot study in Australia. This is a really cool study, and we'll share a little bit during the Q&A. But we're working with a medical device company in Australia. Most of you know exactly who that is, to really start to see, can we put our technology to use in the clinic, and do we find more patients? And I think, of course, the answer is going to be yes. And we're starting that study now, and we've got some early results that tell us that obviously we are finding more patients than the cardiologists have done in the past. And this is a really nice study to help kind of do a real world analysis here. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the last one, which doesn't get a lot of attention, but is actually one of the most important things that we're doing, is we just kicked off a Beth Israel health outcome study. So the team at Harvard and Beth Israel are looking to help me get a health outcomes data to help with the reimbursement. And they believe, as they've looked through the study protocol, they believe that they're going to be able to demonstrate not only does the technology work really well, but it's actually saving the system money. And that's going to be the most important thing when I come in and talk to these payers about reimbursement, is not only can we get this tool utilized every single patient, but can we actually save the system money? And the answer is going to be, I'm saying yes, but obviously we'll get the data from Beth Israel, and that'll come out later this year to support our reimbursement. Whew. So if that isn't enough for 60 days, I don't know what is. I know the team has been working really, really hard, and they've been keeping me running nonstop, but I'm really proud of what we've been able to deliver. And I hope you get a sense from us that when we say we're going to do something, we deliver on those promises, and we're going to continue to do that into the next phase, which is integrations. But this just gives you a snapshot of what we've been able to do in the first 60 days of the year. And hopefully we got a lot more new, exciting news to come over the next several weeks. So I don't want to bore everybody, but I think this is an area that many of you as investors or interested parties want to figure out, is how do we make the complex reimbursement story simple? And I don't know if I can do that for you, because to be honest, as an American, I'm still frustrated with how complex the US system is, but I do understand it, and I do know how to navigate it. And so what we're working on right now is a miscellaneous code. And there's really 3 phases to reimbursement when you're talking about getting approval through Medicare and Medicaid. And right now we are in the first phase, moving into the second phase. First phase is miscellaneous code. As I said before, 93799 is our miscellaneous code, and that's the Medicare code. Right now, we currently have reimbursed at about $148, and that is at the Medicare side. I added this commercial piece in here just because I wanted everybody to be more confused. But on Medicare, that is the government payer. Medicare is the government. But we also have what's called commercial or Medicare Advantage. So this is actually a scheme within the government's system, where you can actually have private insurance within the government system. And anytime there's a Medicare Advantage, this is a commercial payer. And unfortunately, we've heard about this in the news just recently in the United States with a group like United Healthcare. But these are commercial payers who act on behalf of the government. However, because they are a commercial payer, they do actually have a slightly different reimbursement rate. And right now that's about $223. Usually it averages about anywhere around $50 or $70 more, sometimes up to $100 more, or even more sometimes than the actual government. And there's some mechanisms for that. But this is what you see on the miscellaneous code today. And we're operating here. But this isn't the best. Miscellaneous code is what it is. It's a miscellaneous code. It's a catch-all code for products that don't quite have a category defined yet or don't have the process in place with the federal government to get a code. And miscellaneous code does not mean everybody gets reimbursed. It means really only a small percentage of those customers will get reimbursed for miscellaneous. But it is a first pass for many companies like us. The second step is Category 3, and this is exactly where we're at right now. We have filed with Category 3. Category 3 is not an entitlement category. This is a category that you have to demonstrate effectiveness of your technology and demonstrate utilization or potential utilization of your technology, which is why you apply for it, and then you have a meeting. So we've applied. We've got the societies to endorse us. We've got the KOLs to endorse us. We've provided our clinical evidence plan, which is why I showed you guys that slide before. And now we've got our meeting scheduled. So we're in the phase now where we'll start collecting all the questions from the panelists and the participants, as well as anybody in the public. And this is open to the public to have a view for interested parties. So interested parties would be competitors, would be other KOLs, would be other institutions where they can provide any thoughts or feedback as we start to compile our preparation for the meeting. So we'll be working on that over the next month or two, and then we'll be having the meeting, and I will be live in New York with the CMS team, and then the team will be on the call from Australia to answer any questions that they may have for us as we start to negotiate that process. And we anticipate that to have sometime around June or July in the middle of the year for that code, and we will keep everybody updated as we progress through there. The most important thing to me about Category 3 is that it opens up the ability for me to start having the conversations about moving this to a pure Category 1 CPT code. This not only allows me to have full access and reimbursement, it allows me to have conversations with the commercial payers so that we can start getting some coverage earlier than getting Category 1, and I'll share that progress over the next several months and quarters as we progress along. But I just wanted everybody to get a feel for what the three categories of submission looks like for us as we go through reimbursement, but more importantly, why it's important that we progress along so that we can continue to drive the business. So the slide that I know most of you probably immediately went to, and whether you're somebody who likes to do it on the back of a napkin, or you're somebody who has a fully blown out Excel spreadsheet that's looking at a financial forecast for us, a model has to be laid out. So this is the way we've looked at how we come to market, and it's not simple, but it's also not super complex either. What we are actually proposing to our customers, and we've gotten some really positive feedback here, is a subscription model with reimbursement. And it's a graduated model. And what that basically means is as our reimbursement improves, so does our revenue in our model. And what this allows us to do is actually be a strategic partner with the hospitals. So I'm going to walk you through how this formula works. The formula at the bottom is quite easy. It's echoes times CPT times reimbursed value. But how do we get to these numbers? So we know right now in miscellaneous code, which is where we sit today, on average, 20 to 40% of people will actually get approved. The vast majority are going to get denied. And it's just a fact of life. It is the way it is. Miscellaneous code is never a guarantee that you're going to get a product approved by CMS, but you are going to get a percentage of patients approved. These improvements go as we start to increase through our category coding. So Category 3, again, it doesn't mean 100%. It means 40, 60, maybe 50% of patients are going to get approved, and that means that half of them will get denied. And we know that, and we understand that. It's really when you get to Category 1 that you start to improve your overall reimbursement. So the way that we have actually worked the model is as we talk to the hospitals, we talk to them about the number of echocardiograms they have. An example is 10,000 if they do 10,000 in a year, times the average approval of a CPT code. Today, it's miscellaneous. So if we use 30% as an average, you do 10,000 echocardiograms, you can do the math. That means 3,000 of the tests are probably gonna get approved, and you times it by the reimbursed value. We use $150. You can do that math, and that is what the subscription fee will be for us. You divide that by 12. That's how much they'll pay us each month. Now, the benefit of doing this is the hospital now has the opportunity to pay themselves back for the costs that they have to run the test with us. If they can do better than the average, and I have yet to meet a administrator in a hospital who doesn't think their team is the best, and I hope their team is the best, they can do better than the average. If they do better than the average, they can make a little bit extra money on top of the subscription model. And then the beauty for us is as we continue to evolve our category coding from 3 to Category 1, we graduate our model. So our revenue continues to increase over time with the hospital. So we actually partner with the hospital and we grow with the hospital. So as their next year agreement comes in and our category has changed, we just simply change the formula, and then we have a new subscription. This is a win-win for both the hospital as well as us, and we grow as the business grows. And this is a really exciting time because most companies come in and do a subscription-based model. Hospital pays me for the service, and the hospital then has to go on their own to figure out what they're going to do. In this case, they get to grow with me. I get to have the opportunity to bring my reimbursement in. And more importantly, when we get to heart failure, you're going to see that I move directly into category 1, and this formula becomes incredibly lucrative for us as an organization. So this is how the model is going to work. Many of you asking me, when do we put this in place? Obviously, as we start to integrate, we're having these conversations with our hospitals now. Most of them are in their early phases of their 90-day free trial. And the goal is, as we get through that free trial period, we will then have a negotiation and a contract signed with them to move forward with the subscription-based model. And of course, as we get our reimbursement improvement, we'll be able to address and adjust that with each of the hospitals as we move through our agreements. So this is really an interesting model. It's a novel model that we come in, and it's an opportunity for both the hospital and EchoIQ to benefit from helping patients, which we're really excited about. Okay, so I'm gonna get to this part because this is the meat of what I believe is the critical part of us for 2025, and it's the commercial pathway. There really are 3 tranches of important steps that we have to take, and the leading indicator and the leading metric that I need to have within the business is the first one, which is hospital integrations. We do a 3-month free trial for all of our hospital integrations, and I think of this like it's a big funnel, and this big funnel is my hopper. The more hospitals I have in that hopper that are either in integrations or starting to integrate or preparing to integrate, the more that I'm going to have come out the other end of that funnel, which is my revenue. It takes about 4 months on our sales cycle from what we can calculate today, from the time we start the integration, which is a 90-day free trial, until we get the contract in place and we start generating revenue. And then at the end of the year, when heart failure comes, this becomes my catalyst. This is actually an accelerant for us into 2026. So the way I see this working for us in 2025 is the first half of this year is filling up our funnel. It's filling up the hopper. We're getting those integrations done. As we said, now we've got 5 or 6 hospitals that are currently integrating now. We've got about 60 or so, or potentially more, that are sitting there on the side getting ready to put in that hopper. And we've got hundreds and hundreds more hospitals that we're in conversations with that hopefully start to come into that hopper. As we fill that hopper over that 3-month free trial, we start to move them towards the revenue. So I think you're going to start seeing revenue from us coming in towards the second half of the year. I think meaningful revenue starts to happen towards the end of the year, and then an acceleration happens with heart failure. And I continue to come to heart failure because I think for many of you started to recognize that. Why does this model matter so much? Because when I integrate now, I don't have to repeat that cycle for heart failure, because on our platform, heart failure actually sits on the platform. Currently, right now, it's just not turned on. So when I integrate a hospital for aortic stenosis today, in 12 months from now or 9 months from now, whenever heart failure comes out and we get the approval from the FDA, knock on wood, and all the other things that give us all good vibes that we continue to go down the path of the FDA clearance. But when heart failure comes on, I don't have to go back to the hospital to integrate. It's already integrated into the hospital. So the more integrations I get today, the faster I can get to heart failure turn on at the end of the year, which is my accelerant. And again, remember, that has category 1 code available now, reimbursing at about $250 or so. So it gives us a really good chance to not only create a nice base of business in 2025, but it gives us a really good runway for an acceleration into 2026. So I don't love using the hockey stick analogy, but I think it really starts to show that we're going to see some revenue. We'll see some meaningful revenue, and then we're going to see an acceleration into 2026. So there really are 3 key paths that have to happen in 2025. And I'm asking you guys to watch me in the integration space. That is my leading indicator. As we integrate hospitals and you see me coming in with the next business update with more integrations, that's going to be the telltale sign that we're building ourselves to a meaningful revenue towards the end of the year and into 2026. So I think we're going to really start to see some momentum build with integrations over the first half of this year. And hopefully you're starting to see some of that momentum and that excitement build in the first 60 days. And so I'm going to wrap up with these last couple slides because I know we want to get to Q&A, and this is what happens. You get me going. I get so excited about what we're doing. Why does heart failure matter? Again, I told you about the $70 billion as the total addressable market. One of the things that really gets me frustrated is that 25% of patients, when they get diagnosed with heart failure or they even go in to get checked, they get readmitted to the hospital. So this is driving healthcare costs, and it's driving it at an exponential rate in the United States. And we have a solution that we believe are really going to help the physicians. And I'm not going to belabor this slide. You guys have seen this slide, but this is the data we presented at the end of last year at a conference in Europe. This is the data that tells me that we are onto something special. If you look at the left side of the slide, you can see that just current practice right now, about 50%, 46% of patients actually get clearly diagnosed. If you go to the middle bar, our AI by itself was able to diagnose 86% of those patients. And the last bar is the most important bar. That far bar to the right, 97%. When you combine the expertise of the cardiologist with our AI technology, 97% of those patients get diagnosed. Think about that. We've nearly doubled. In fact, we have pretty much doubled, but we've almost closed that gap to 100%. So we're talking now with the cardiologist and the AI tool, we can now get to 97% of those patients who half of those patients would have been sent back through the system. Unfortunately, we probably would have showed up with some minor or major event that happened to them. And now we can say, look, we can diagnose you not only accurately, but earlier, and hopefully get you into care. And that's the most important thing I think heart failure brings to us. So where are we at? I know the question's coming. You guys have seen this slide. We are well under our way, pre-sub discussions. We are excited about hopefully in the next couple of weeks to be able to make an announcement. We're in the discussions with the FDA now under our pre-sub. That's usually a 90-day process, and we are getting close to closing that process out. And then we'll come back to you with the updates of what we're going to do next. But we believe, and I strongly believe as the CEO, we are on track to deliver our FDA clearance at the end of this year, and we will come back to you with more exact timings. But currently now, what I can share with you is the conversations are going incredibly positive with us right now in the FDA, and we'll come back to you with more updates on where we'll be and what the next steps will look like for submission there. So this is my last slide. I'm going to stop here because I want to give everybody a sense of not only what we're doing today, and I think some of you might have heard me say this as a CEO. The first thing I came in and just said, look, guys, we're going to slow down our R&D. Why? Because I don't want to be a shiny object company. We're too small of a company to chase the thing that's 3 or 4 years out. So we slowed that down, but I need everybody to understand how important our pipeline can be to our technology, because right now with that Netta database and the access we have, I mean, the Netta team's been incredible for us to work with. They have 2 million echocardiograms now in that database. And so when we decide to turn that R&D back on, we have pulmonary hypertension sitting out there in the wings ready to go. And we believe that actually we're going to turn that back on and do a pilot study by the end of this year. And then we'll look at other structural heart diseases. But not only are we going to be successful in delivering the products today, I believe we're going to be successful in delivering the products of the future. And when we start talking about heart failure, you start talking about pulmonary hypertension, each one of these individually can be company makers. And we believe we've got the technology and the database and the right partners to deliver on our pipeline for the future. So I'm going to stop there. I think we covered a lot of ground. Hopefully what you got from this presentation is, one, we're working our butts off to make sure that we continue to deliver for the business and deliver on behalf of each and every one of you as a shareholder. But hopefully you're also seeing the passion that we have as a company to want to continue to do the right thing to help the healthcare systems, to help those patients, and ultimately to help us as a business grow. And hopefully you're seeing the passion that we have, because I know I'm delivering this on behalf of the company, but I guarantee every one of the employees in the company has the same level of passion, if not more than I do, to do what we're doing every day. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to kick it over to Dion to see if there's any questions and how we want to progress going forward.
Thanks, Dustin. Very comprehensive overview and quite a few questions that have come through. What I'm trying to do is to bucket all these questions in some categories, because there's a lot of similarity in some of the questions, and some of these you have answered, but I'm going to ask them anyway, because obviously they're important to our investors. So the first question is, when do you expect to see revenues from the existing integrations?
Yeah, no, I think that's and I think that was the first question we get. Obviously, I expect to see it in the second half. I think you're gonna see, and this is where I'll get frustrated, but as you see my integrations coming in, you're going to see revenue trickle, and then you're going to see an acceleration. So I think the beginning second half of the year, you're going to start to see some revenue coming in, and we won't be boastful about that because it won't be enough. And then you're going to see meaningful revenue come towards the end of the year, and that's really where we're going to see that acceleration come. But I'm asking everybody is hold me accountable to those integrations. That's going to be the number that's going to give you that leading indicator of where we're headed towards revenue.
Thanks, Dustin. The second question is, can you give us any updates from the FDA discussion regarding your heart failure model?
I can give you as much as I possibly can, which is what I just did on that slide. We're in the final stages of that pre-sub, and that's a 90-day process. I think we're at day 75 or something like that, or maybe day 80. We've had really positive discussions with the FDA, as many of you can imagine. Explaining AI technology and what we do and how we're different. In a world where there's just massive complexity going on, and everybody's seen what's happening in the U.S. from the political side. We are very encouraged with the conversations we're having. The questions make sense. I think the direction going forward makes sense, and we are going to be announcing something, I think, very shortly on the outcomes of that. But I can't give you everything today because we're not finalized with it.
Okay.
But I'm very confident we are on track to deliver on the dates that we had originally set out.
Thank you. What is the biggest hurdle you see in obtaining a full Category 3 reimbursement, and how confident are you in obtaining it?
Yeah, I'm always an eternal optimist. I'm very confident anyway. I know the space pretty well. I know the questions we're going to get. And the main thing for us is that we're prepared when we walk in that room to answer any and all questions. So we will do our best to make sure we are fully prepared. We've got our KOLs and our societies that are backing us and supporting us, and they're sending in the support there. And I think our confidence is high. I think we've got the right clinical evidence. There are very few companies in our space that have done the clinical studies that we have done, that have demonstrated consistency and validating the study over and over again in terms of utility of efficacy, but also in the reliability of that test to being done both from a specificity as well as sensitivity. So if I walk in that room tomorrow, I'm going to walk in there with a high degree of confidence that we are prepared and we've got the right package to discuss with CMS.
Thank you. A question about the OTCQB. So when do you anticipate this listing, and what do you hope to achieve with this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with what do I hope to achieve. As I'm making the rounds around the United States, I was just in New York a couple weeks ago, and I was in front of 61 different investors from high net worth, private equity, venture capital, even some family offices, and just sharing our story. The first question I get is, can I buy it on the U.S. exchange? That's the first thing they want. Most of them just don't have access to to an institution where they can buy it on the Australian exchange. So this is going to be our opportunity to allow more shareholders to come in, but more importantly, to allow more people to really start watching what we're doing and get involved with the company. So that's what we're looking to achieve. I want to open that corridor for folks who just would like to buy some shares, get involved in the company, and they can do that through the OTC. Look, I have no illusions that the OTC changes some calculus for us as an organization. It just opens up a corridor for U.S. investors to come in and participate in the growth that we're having as a company. When do we expect something? Well, they give you an arbitrary timeline. That's ridiculous. They talk weeks in terms of how long it's going to take them to process our application. But I believe that we'll probably see that happen, well before the end of Q2. So we should have some news on that coming shortly. But we just started the process. We're talking directly to the exchange. We meet all the minimum criteria, and we probably exceed the vast majority of the minimum criteria. So I don't think this process will take too long.
Thank you. There's a question about expansion, and the question is Europe on the radar? And if so, which countries in Europe will you target first?
Yeah, we're definitely having some really good conversations with a number of distributors in Europe at the moment, and we've had a number of companies approach us about entering into Europe, and I think that is an incredibly good opportunity for us. I'm always a little cautious that we go too fast and we lose sight of what we're focusing on, which is the U.S. And I think everybody would agree with me. If that meant that I was going to lose focus and have less integrations in the U.S. because I was focusing on too quick expansion in Europe, that probably wouldn't be helping the overall business. But we're continuing to have really good conversations. There are a number of folks who have approached us, and we've progressed those conversations along. I think the European market makes a lot of sense. We also have to remember the European market, is a tougher market. Many of the countries have signaled that they're looking to reduce their overall healthcare expenditure, and we'd have to be able to really come in and work really closely with the governments. I know that space very well, and we'll have good conversations. I wouldn't narrow us down to any individual European country. I think it's going to come down to which one of the governments is most eager to bring technology in to create efficiency. I can tell you a number of the countries that have been very vocal in the public stage for this is the Middle Eastern countries. So we know Saudi Arabia, they've got a really aggressive prince there who has been very clear he wants to have his most technologically advanced healthcare system in the world. We're having conversations there. I think the folks out of UAE as well are going to be very interested. So I think there's a number of countries who have signaled interest in wanting to look at healthcare technology, and we're going to have those conversations. And the European countries, of course, will be an important market for us as we go forward.
Thanks, Dustin. And our shareholders want to know, as a person on the ground, what feedback are you receiving from the hospitals currently trialing EchoSolv? And are there any concerns or risks that you currently see that could potentially slow adoption?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a couple pieces to it. I think most of the cardiologists are really intrigued, right? This is a very interesting new field for them. Obviously they've spent the last 25, 30 years, reading images and making their own diagnoses. So as the data continues to become more robust, they're all intrigued to really want to see, does this really work in my practice? And I think the best example of this is when we worked with the Baylor Scott and White team and we did the first 30,000 echoes, and they were shocked that we found more, I think it was 7 or 8% more of the patients than they did, and they said, look, we're a world-class cardiology group here. And it's like, yeah, it's a hard thing to do. And the technology just makes it a little bit more simple. So I think what we're seeing is that many of the cardiologists are intrigued and interested. They want to play around with the tool a bit to kind of confirm whether or not it actually works in their practice. It's always that not invented here syndrome. Like, well, does it work for my practice? And that's what we love about the 90-day free trial. It gives people a chance to play with the toy, actually see what it does within their practice, gets it into their workflow. I think the biggest hurdle I'm seeing right now is time. I'm an impatient man and I have a hard time waiting. And sometimes it just takes time to get the conversation moved to the next person, to get it in the hospital and get it started. And I want it to happen tomorrow. And I can't drive every one of those people crazy by doing it tomorrow. But my biggest hurdle is time. It takes longer than I want it to, and we want to get it done as fast as we can because this technology can help save a lot of people's lives.
Thanks, Dustin. The other ones are on a competitive moat. And the question is, how easy or difficult is it to protect the technology? And can we adequately protect our IP to maintain our competitive advantage?
Yeah, and that's why it was important for me when I first started to really dig into the patents to make sure that our patents were going to be able to hold up as the technologies evolve around the world. And obviously, there's a lot of folks who can get access to echocardiograms, and there's a lot of smart people who can create algorithms. But I think being able to work directly with the folks at Netta, being able to have Professor Playford and Professor Strange to really kind of help us with the algorithm and how we set our thresholds. I think our patents are strong. I think a lot of people will want to play around in this space, and we're going to have to be really aggressive about defending our patents. And that's why the international and the geographical patents are going to be so critical for us. I think our competitive moat really sets us apart when you talk about the partnership we have with Netta, the fact that we have access to one of the largest databases in the world. And I think this is an important competitive moat for us because we can really start to look at other disease areas as well. And if you look at competitors in the space, they're kind of a one product technology, right? They work in aortic stenosis, or maybe they work in heart failure, but they really don't have a data set to train models to look at things like mitral regurgitation or pulmonary arterial hypertension. And that's where our partnership with Netta really sets us apart as a competitive moat in terms of where we are with AI technology.
Thanks, Dustin. We're coming up to the hour, so I think we'll do 2 more questions and then we'll wrap it up. So I'll do the final 2. And the next question was, does the company foresee the need for another capital raise in the future?
Well, look, I think the way we've looked at this is, and Andrew and I talk about this almost on a daily basis. We strategically invest where we think is going to get us the biggest amount of growth for the organization, and we've been pretty fiscally responsible with our money. So we've got about let's say a little over $5 million in the bank right now. We're burning let's say a little over $400,000 a month, maybe a tad bit over that. So I think we got plenty of runway. Obviously, we want to make sure that when the right time is to make the right investment, if that's a bigger investment, we'll come back to the street and have that conversation. But right now, we've been able to manage our cash flow pretty well. And you've seen from me, we invest where we should and we don't invest where we shouldn't. We've been right sizing the Australian team a bit. We've we're downsizing the office. We're putting the money where it needs to go rather than where it doesn't need to be. And Andrew and I continue to make sure that we are fiscally responsible here. So could I say that we're never coming to the street? Absolutely not. Can I say that we are? I can't guarantee we are either. So I think for us, we're going to look at the cash flow. We're going to make sure that we're investing appropriately. And when there's an inflection point where we think this is the right time to need a bit more money to infuse into the business, we will obviously make that choice when it comes.
Then the final question, Dustin, before we wrap up, is more of a personal one, and the investor has asked is, in the last 60 days, has the role in the company lived up to your own expectations?
I mean, and I know CEOs will say different things, but I have to say, honestly, it's exceeded. And it's less about the role in the company and more about the team around me. I do at days feel like I'm chasing the team to catch up. And there's nobody that can be in a seat like mine and not be super happy to know that your team is running ahead of you. We're a small and mighty team. You could count pretty much the whole team on hands and maybe 1 foot. We don't have a big team, but what we do have is very laser tight focus on what we're trying to achieve. So has it achieved what I expected? Yeah, it's probably exceeded it because the team has really been doing some amazing stuff. And hopefully this presentation and just a 60-day update of what we've achieved is given everybody a bit of confidence that the management and the leadership team are all working in one direction, which is to continue to progress the momentum of the company.
Thanks, Dustin. That takes us to the hour. I'm mindful there are a few questions that we haven't got to. So what I'll do is I will work with Sam and the investment group to try and see if we can get the emails and the phone numbers. And between myself and Dustin, we'll reach out directly to make sure that your own individual question has been answered. So thank you all. And that concludes the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Dion and Dustin. Just Sam here again from SDIR. That'll wrap things up for today. As Dion said, we'll follow up with investors to make sure all those relevant questions have been covered. But look, thanks again to Dustin for that comprehensive presentation. As mentioned earlier, a recording of the webinar will be available on EchoIQ's platforms later today because we did cover a lot of ground there. Perhaps just before we go, Dustin, is there any final comments you wanted to add just to wrap things up?
My biggest comment is just, and I said at the beginning, I'll say it at the end, we don't exist without all of your support. And it's just a huge thank you. For those of you that own shares, thank you. For those of you who are interested and want to own shares, I highly encourage you to do so because we are forever grateful in any support that we have. And we know that it's all your hard work that gets us to where we are. And thank you guys. Thank you for taking the time. And we're going to be open for questions, and our goal is to be as transparent about the business and where we're moving to in the future. So thank you. And thanks everybody for your support.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks again to Dustin and to Dion for that presentation. And we'll see you all again soon.